Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be working on some DIY farmhouse decor, just kind of some everyday decor with a little bit of a rustic farmhouse style, although, you can remove that aspect if that's not your thing. But let's get started with today's video. We're going to be using some Dollar Tree and Dollar General items, as well as maybe a few other random pieces. First up, I have this piece from the Dollar Tree. I picked this up, I think, last year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them again this year, or anything similar that you could pick up at another store would work just fine. But I just wanted to give it a little bit of a facelift. So I am stippling on some white paint mixed with baking soda. This gives a really fun texture. I've heard people talk about the salt wash, which is a paint additive which works similarly to baking soda, but it's specifically designed for this purpose. But I don't have it, so I'm just using baking soda. Now, I will say that this got a little bit messy because I'm trying to stipple it in between all of the little openings of the letters. So when I was shoving the paintbrush in those areas, it was splattering a little bit. So just, protect your space. I was able to clean it up. This baking soda, comes up pretty easy. But I'm just going to go a little bit thicker on the front, but I am covering the insides here. And then for the bottom, I just did like a plain white paint because I didn't want the texture to disrupt how it stood up on its own. But look at that texture. I love this. So to pull out that texture that we've just added, we're going to use a little bit of brown paint. I've been saying lately in my videos that I've been working through my craft stash, and so that's what I'm doing. And I just pulled out whatever brown paint I had. I think it might have been burnt umber. And I use a chippy brush with just a little bit of paint on there, not much. And when I went over it, it really pulled out that texture. And then I also highlighted the edges. And then I did on the these sides pieces here, tops and sides, I did a little bit of it. I didn't worry about it as much, but I did want to get some coverage on that as well. And then I went in with some Mod Podge, and I did a really thick coat here. I did this to help make the baking soda not rub off or chip off. I don't know if it would, but just to be sure. And I did use a hard coat Mod Podge because I had that on hand. If I didn't have that on hand, I would just use a regular matte or glossy finish, whatever you like. But I love how this came out. Super simple little facelift on this piece, but it does give it a whole new look, and I was thrilled with how that one came out. We're going to start by taking the chalkboard tag from Dollar Tree. I only had one left in my pack, but that's all I needed. We're going to take off the little hanger here. We're not going to be using that. We're going to use some twine later on. And I wanted to paint this white. So I'm using my chippy brush, even though I knew that that would give more texture, but I didn't want the heavier brush strokes of a different paintbrush. And I did have to do a couple coats in this, being careful because as it is painted, it gets wet and it's cardboard, so you need to let it dry and not get it too saturated. But overall, I ended up liking the look of painting this white, even though you can see a little bit of the black through it. Once that was dry, I pulled out these black and white floral stickers that I had in my stash from some event I went to that had kind of a crafting element to it. But you could use some rub-on transfers or even a stencil, which is what I thought about doing. But I love this black and white, but I didn't want it to be quite as crisp as a black and white. So I went over this with some like beige paint that I had mixed up for another project. And first I was like, thought it was too heavy in places and was wiping it off. And then I ended up really, really liking this look. So I just kind of kept going over it. Not too heavy on the paintbrush, but I went quite heavy until I had the desired look. We're going to set that tag aside for just a moment, and I'm going to take some jute twine and I'm just going to wrap the end of it with tape to give me a point to thread my beads here. Sorry for the lighting here. I had a little of sun peeking through my blinds, but I'm going to just use beads I had on hand. Pretty sure the square ones, I know the square ones came from a beaded garland from Dollar Tree, and the white ones were ones that I already had on hand from another beaded garland that I took apart and used. And then I have tassels already made up from previous projects. So I went through and pulled out one in the coordinating twine. I used a little tool to spread open the opening here just so that I could thread my twine through it. And then I had a little piece that was on there from when I had attached this twine somewhere else. So I clipped that off, or snipped that off rather, and tied that on real good in a double knot. And then I'm going to take the twine and thread it up just a couple of those beads to help just keep it secure. You could also put a dab of hot glue on the top of the knot, and then I trimmed that down. I'm taking the other end of our twine and we're going to thread that through our little tag, and this is just going to be the other side of our beaded garland. Once again, I'm going to double knot that and feed that up into our beaded garland, and just a couple, and that just helps kind of secure it. But I love how this came out. I thought it was really pretty. I was really happy with painting over the sticker just to kind of fade it down a little bit, but let me know what you think about it. This next one is a little mini ladder sign, I guess, that I picked up from Dollar General. I picked this up, I think I paid maybe 20 cents for it. I actually picked up a couple of them. Their after Christmas clearance or after season clearance is awesome. And I was like, I know I can make this over. And if you don't have one of these, you can easily make these with some dowel rods. You can get square dowel rods and make them. So we heated that up just with my heat gun to help loosen the glue. I thought I was gonna have to cut it out, but I just loosened the glue with the heat gun, carefully grabbed the pieces because they were metal and the heat gun obviously warmed them up, and twisted them out of there. I also took the twine out of the top handle piece and sanded those holes down, filled them with spackling, let that dry, and gave them a good sanding to smooth it out. This piece is going to have a pretty simple makeover. We're going to make a stain. So in a paper bowl, I have some water, and then I'm just putting in a couple different colors of paint, a brown paint and a beige paint. We're going to mix this up really, really good and give ourselves a stain. And I'm just going to brush this across the little ladder and wipe it with a paper towel. Now you can see that some of the areas with where the spackling has been, it wasn't adhering as good, but we're going to disguise that in just a minute, so no worries. Depending on how dark you want this to be, depends on how much paint versus water you put in there, how long you let it sit on the wood before you wipe it off. So you can certainly customize this, and it's a great way to get some color without actually having to use stain. And it was helping me use up some of those little bits of paint that I had left that I just am trying to use up what's in the bottles. Once that was dry, I went in with my chippy brush and some white paint. And we're going to dry brush over this, but we are going to build up the color. I wanted it to be a little bit more of a white wash look. So I started out with less and then I kept adding to it. I made sure to get all of the sides. I was just going for a more rusticy farmhouse look. You could also just give this a solid coat of paint. Again, I know not everyone's going to find this piece, but you might be able to find something similar or make one with some dowel rods. But I just wanted to rustic that up. And here I have it just displayed with a beaded garland hanging over it. It'd be really cute on a kitchen counter with a tea towel in there, which is probably what I'm going to do. And but I absolutely love how this came out. So let me know what you think of this piece. Up next, I have this mini tobacco basket. This was another Christmas clearance item from Dollar General, but you can find these in various home decor stores, maybe even at a thrift store or an old one that you have at home that you just want to kind of give it a new look. There's a couple pieces where the basket was a little bit ripped, so that's why you're seeing the faux stain that we made here with the brown paint and water not taking quite as good to it, but it's okay. You know, rustic, it's okay. So once again, we're just painting this on with a paintbrush. I'm letting this soak in a little bit more before I wipe it off, but we're going to do all of the edges, all of the sides, and just darken this up a little bit. I want it to be a little bit of a darker brown than the lighter color that it came in. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. Also, leaving a comment down below. Let me know what your favorite DIY is. If you don't know what to say, you can also just leave an emoji. But all of those interactions do help out my channel a whole lot, so I would appreciate it. It lets me know that you like my videos, and it lets YouTube know that you like my videos. To embellish this little basket, we're just going to put some florals. These are just some scraps that I had. I believe these were from the Dollar Tree, and I like them because they're a little bit more neutral, which sometimes I do neutral. I just did a bunch of stuff with color for spring, so if you're into that, make sure to check those out. Now I'm tying that with some twine. My head got in the way because, yes, I was holding the twine with my teeth. Yeah, I use fancy techniques here, but we're just going to wrap these stems together with some twine. I just tied a knot at the top of it and then wrapped it around, just making sure I was covering up all of the green, just kind of going until it was covered. We're going to end it with a little bit of hot glue, making sure you don't burn your fingers. And then I needed to trim off the rest of the stems, so I used, I think those are wire cutters. And then there were still these sharp edges hanging out, and plus you could still see like the green and not like the metal. So I'm just going to use a little bit more twine with some hot glue and very carefully covering that up, trying to not burn my fingers. Finger protectors are handy, but I just was trying to get it done and I didn't stop to put any on. But this worked out really good. And then I did use a lighter to kind of burn off any fuzzies from the twine, but also any glue strings. And just be careful you don't set your florals on fire. And just a couple dabs of hot glue, holding that down because this would just kind of bounce back up. So I held it down until the glue started to set. And this is going to be really cute. It kind of looks weird here. I should have actually styled it differently for the video, maybe with a candle in front of it. But this is going to be super fun to decorate with. For this DIY, we're going to use some Easter eggs, but we're not making Easter decor. These are from the Dollar Tree. I picked them up last year at the end of the season, like for 50 cents. But if you've got some Easter eggs left over, we're going to make these into some farm fresh eggs. You can buy faux farm fresh eggs at the store. So we are going to make our own at a fraction of the cost. And I mixed up some beige paint. I was going for the colors. If you have ever seen, which most of you probably have, farm fresh eggs, they are beautiful. So I made this pretty beige color, and I am just using a wooden skewer and an empty ribbon spool to house my skewers so that the eggs can dry. And then I did half of them like that, and then I added in a little bit of pink, like a really light pink, to some of this beige and made a slightly pink egg because there are some beautiful farm fresh eggs that are pink. And I'm just painting the one end while I'm holding it, and then I put it on top of the skewer, and then I paint the rest of it, and then I let it dry, and I think I did like 3 coats on each of these. And then once that's all dry, we got to make our farm fresh eggs speckled. So I'm adding in a little bit of brown paint to the existing beige paint that I had. And this did get a little bit messy. Protect your workspace. It took me a little bit. I'm using an older, stiff paintbrush. A toothbrush would work well for this. Just be careful you don't get the splatter to go too far, okay? It can get a little out of hand if you're not careful. But this came out, honestly, better than I even thought it would. And I've got these beautiful speckled eggs. And the one is like a beigey, it kind of looks green here, but it's more like a beige color, although there are farm fresh eggs that are green as well. So we're going to use the little crate that they came in, but if you don't have an egg carton that yours come in, you can just use an egg carton from the store, cut it down. And I didn't want to use more moss than needed, so I'm cutting up little pieces of fabric in my stash. I think it was like a scarf from Dollar Tree, just making little pieces of them and gluing them to the bottom, making sure it's only at the bottom so that it's not going to be seen, but that it will elevate the egg so that I don't have to use more moss. And I'm just going to put hot glue, as you can see, mainly around the perimeter of each of the openings, each of the circles. And that is so that it's seen. I don't need a bunch of it underneath because you're not going to be able to see it, right? And then I'm going to take a hefty amount of glue and glue the egg in. I did some of them straight up. I did some of them slightly turned. I didn't want it to be completely like all over the place, but I didn't want it to look like perfection either. So as I'm pushing the moss in, I do kind of tap out any extra just so that I'm not wasting it. And then once I started building them in here, I was like, okay, I want a little bit more of that moss in between. So I'm just putting some hot glue, and then I just use whatever tool I could grab. You could use a little wooden skewer or a popsicle stick to just kind of put that moss down in, because I want it to look not, super perfection here. And I love how this came out. This is going to be cute, probably like on a book stack or something in my decor, but little homemade farm fresh eggs. That's going to do it for today's video. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new, and make sure your notification bell is turned on. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.